You are watching or listening to Purham and Associates. For more information, go to rpurham.com or follow me on all social media platforms and subscribe at RPURHAM. Thanks. See you over there. Hey, good day to you all. Welcome to Purham and Associates. I'm your host, Randy Purham. Hey, I hope y'all all had a fantastic weekend. And I missed you all last week. I think I was only on one day last week, but a lot's going on. You know how it is. But hey, nonetheless, we got a very special guest with us today. And I'm excited to talk to him because we're covering one of my favorite subjects. Y'all see what that is in a minute. We have none other than John Leake. He's the author of Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality, and is a nonfiction author with a lifelong interest in medical history and forensic medicine. Excuse me. Since 2021, he has worked with Dr. Peter McCullough and was the primary author of their best-selling book, The Courage to Face COVID-19. He writes a daily investigative report for the Focal Point on Substack newsletter and is a secretary of the McCullough Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing to some and presenting to others, Mr. John Leake. Morning, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Delighted to be here, Randy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to jump right into, the vaccine thing because that's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So anybody that I get that's an expert in the vaccine world, I'm like, let's get it.
All right, let's do it.
So just so you are aware and the audience is aware, my background in the military for 22 years was a CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear defense and everything else. So COVID-19 was my retirement year in 2020, and it's near and dear to my heart. As I was stationed in Naples, Italy during that time frame. So needless to say, yeah, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. But I wanted to jump right into it and ask you, over the last 3 years particularly, have there with the crisis, the COVID crisis kind of like waning off, people seem like they kind of like forgotten about it in a sense. What has been your purview when it comes to like the national conversation when it comes to the vaccines itself?
Well, I think that the biodefense establishment in Washington and its friends in the biodefense research complex, places like the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Ralph Barrick, who played an instrumental role in creating SARS-CoV-2, the causative agent of COVID-19. I think this complex of American biotechnicians, their friends at the NIH, Anthony Fauci and his virology pals, were instrumental in concealing the laboratory origin of SARS-CoV-2. I think they would all prefer for all of this to be forgotten. And, we Americans, as you know, Randy, we do have a short attention span. We do have a short memory. Our government tortures us from time to time, abuses us, unleashes viruses on us, intentionally or unintentionally. You remember the whole smallpox attacks in 2001?
Yes.
That letter attack seems to have originated at Fort Detrick, the U.S. uh, biodefense lab. So our government tortures us every now and then relies on us, we the people, to sort of forget. We get distracted. There's other things that happen, and then we're off to the next crisis,
Next thing, yep.
which the U.S. government either creates or amplifies. So, I'm sorry to sound cynical, but
No, you're absolutely
it's just
right.
true.
Yeah.
It's just true. I mean, I really do think that government's the problem. Ronald Reagan said it in his inaugural address of 1981. Government's not the solution; it's the problem.
Yep.
And so, in terms of the COVID-19 vaccine, totally fraudulent product. I'm just laying the cut straight. Totally fraudulent product, experimental product. There was no legitimate reason to administer this to the entire population, never mind young and healthy athletes. So I just think the COVID-19 pandemic, the causative agent, was created largely by U.S. government agencies, and then the vaccine, which was sponsored and endorsed by U.S. government vaccines, was a dangerous fraud. And I think the American people are waking up to that.
Yeah.
I think that we, in my view, and you might consider me a little bit radical, I think the whole U.S. government just needs to be fired. I think all of these people should be replaced. The question is, who do we replace them with? And perhaps you, I don't know, a few good guys. I don't know.
Fire them and shut it down, and let's just move on. Because I'm along those lines with you, John. When you think about like what happened between 2019 and even through 2020 and 2021, 2022, you look at that window, that 4-year period of how things unfolded with SARS and COVID and the vaccines and everything else. You saw the monopoly come to just like take over. These are the pharmaceutical industries, Anthony Fauci and company, and you just saw them just like take over everything and said, okay, we're in charge now, we're gonna control everything. And it was a disaster. It was an utter disaster, and it was just like, wow. At the end of this, y'all need to go to jail, but they're still walking around scot free. I'm utterly amazed by that, but it's okay. They're all in their elder years, so I guess time will run its course eventually. But outside of that, during that time, I asked one simple question. Anytime somebody got sick, I said, "Whatever happened to the common cold and the flu?" it just seemed like it was those two things just got replaced with COVID. It was just like, oh, they got COVID. It was like, dude just literally sneezed, and it's like almost it's the fall. Like, can they have allergies at least? You just got to diagnose them with COVID. They got COVID. They need to go get the vaccine. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And so, but that conversation was squelched through the media. It was squelched.
Was
through companies. Just like your Fortune 500 companies and everything else. With these the vaccine mandates, it was like, and then even when people did get the vaccine, they still got sick or they died. So it's kind of like, I want to get your thoughts on like the efficacy of the vaccines that were rolled out between the three companies, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna. What are your thoughts, or if you have any thoughts about how that worked out for them?
Well, there was no efficacy. I mean,
in short, right?
I mean, it didn't.
Yeah.
See, here, Randy, first of all, I'm glad you used the word monopoly, because that's the essence of this whole thing. There's a perceived opportunity, men with power in the government and their rich buddies outside of government, Bill Gates, famous monopolist, by the way. The U.S. government sued him in 1998 to 2000, those years, for Sherman antitrust violations. He was considered the worst monopolist since John D. Rockefeller. So yes, they saw an opportunity, they seized upon it in a monopolistic way. Any other solutions that were offered, early treatment for the illness, such as Dr. Peter McCullough, my partner, proposed, were squelched. And you're right. Like everything, any kind of upper respiratory condition, whether it be the common cold or influenza or allergies, everything was attributed to COVID-19.
Yeah.
And, there was a study that just was published in Germany in which the researchers took the data on PCR testing in the early days of the pandemic. I'm talking about 2020, 2021. And they were able to then compare positive PCR tests to subsequent antibody tests. And what they concluded was 86% positive PCRs in these early years. The PCR, the machine that does the cycles to detect a fragment of protein, was set at a cycle rating too high. So in other words, the test was calibrated, the machine was calibrated in a way that was far too sensitive for picking up this genetic material. So the conclusion was, in Germany at least, where the study was conducted, the data set was obtained, 86% in this sample were false positives. Well, it was all of these positive PCR tests that were used as the basis for shutting everything down, for telling everyone to stay at home, for telling everyone they had to get this vaccine that doesn't work. So, the whole thing, and I think it's hard for people to wrap their minds around it because it's just so big and crazy. This is all just a fraud, a massive fraud.
I couldn't agree with you more, John, because when I retired, so for the audience to understand the timeline here, that's what we're talking about. From 2020, actually 2019, technically, because of the way just the military does things, the fiscal year 2019, October or 2020, but October 2019, let's put it like that. I stopped taking vaccines because I was getting ready to retire, and I kind of like had that luxury of getting away with it because I hated doing vaccines anyways. But, being on contract with the military, you just kind of do those things. But from 2019 forward to this very day, when I go to the doctor and everything, I have not had any vaccines whatsoever. None. And I've been perfectly fine outside of your seasonal, common cold, and I may have a touch of the flu for a few days type of thing. But outside of that, it's like, what's the point? Is let natural immunity do its job. If you're around people that are sick and you get sick, your antibodies kick in and you build up an immunity to it and you move on, just like we always done. But that's been always like, I don't say always, that's been frowned upon during the COVID years. It was like, well, if you're feeling sick and everything else, you need to go get the vaccine, and the natural immunity doesn't work. That's been proven false. I was like, wait. Time out. Time the hell out. Since who came up with the idea that natural immunity does not work? And then that starts cycling in the media. And then people start.
Well, hang on, I gotta interject. You're onto it. I mean,
go ahead.
Your idea of this is a monopoly, you're right on that score, and you're right on this. Look, this is totally absurd. I mean, that's when I realized these guys are just the biggest parcel of liars. I mean, and they're not only liars, it's such a huge whopper of a lie. I mean, a kid gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar and he says, "No, Daddy, I didn't take the cookie." Or the other possibility would be for the kid to say, "I didn't take the cookie. You took the cookie." Just to flip it around on. I mean, it's this kind of lying where you're just stunned. So the way a vaccine is supposed to work, the way it was always understood to work, going back to Edward Jenner at the end of the 18th century, is you introduce a weak and attenuated or inactivated form of the pathogen You introduce that to the body, and that stimulates natural immunity. I mean, in other words, to say, oh, the COVID vaccine is better than natural immunity is, on the face of it, ridiculous. The whole point of the vaccine is to stimulate natural immunity. So this can go down one of two ways. Either you get the virus and all of the proteins that compose the virus, or you can get some piece of the virus, an attenuated virus. In the case of this newfangled gene therapy shot, it's a bit of messenger RNA code that theoretically causes the deltoid muscle to produce one protein of the virus on the spike. And then the idea is the body, the natural immunity, the natural immune response is to recognize and mount an antibody response. But I just want your audience to understand this. The theory and practice of vaccines is to stimulate natural immunity. So to say it's better than natural immunity is like saying my automobile drives better than automobiles, or my ability to run 3 miles is superior to my ability to run 3 miles. I mean, it just makes sense. But you see, this is what these lunatics do. I'm just, the more I've thought about this for 5 years, all of this is just a form of just psychological confusion.
It was definitely psychological.
It's like a gigantic, well, you know about this from the military. Confuse the enemy, get him where he doesn't know what's right from left, what's up from down, where the enemy's coming, who's in his, who's amongst his comrade, and then he's just confused and demoralized. So I perceive what the U.S. government did to be just a massive psyop to demoralize and confuse our people.
It was. It's unfortunate, and you got people to this very day. I live in Austin, Texas, and I see people driving in a car by themselves with a mask on still. Literally, just yesterday, I'm like, we still doing this? Like, I wanna like build a billboard or like a little sign and put it like attach it to like my passenger side window and say, if you're wearing a mask and you're driving by yourself, you're an idiot. I just want to put that up there, just to get people like riled up, because it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that to yourself? But okay, I want to get into just recently. President Trump he announced a study looking into him along with RFK Jr., HHS Secretary. Looking into the aluminum in vaccines, and I quote here, the Trump administration is studying the safety of an ingredient commonly used in vaccines, an additive that contains aluminum. Coming after other recent changes to vaccine policy, many public health experts worry that the administration may now try to remove the ingredient. And the president said, of course, that he doesn't want aluminum in vaccines. I want to get your thoughts on everybody probably is like thinking like, wait, so I could take a can of soda and finish it and then crush it down and cook it up and turn it into a vaccine. just like when he said, bleach is a natural disinfectant, and people was like, oh, he's saying, to shoot yourself up with bleach. But I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, so it was discovered back in the 30s that I think the best way to think of this is it's like a powdered aluminum salt. It's conditioned, prepared with other chemical agents to create what chemists call an aluminum salt. And this aluminum salt, the perception was that it stimulates an immune response. So the problem, and this goes all the way back to the beginning of vaccines, is that if you take a weakened version of the pathogen, or what they call attenuated, which means attenuate comes from Latin to make thin or to make weak. So the problem, if you have a full strength pathogen and you inject the person with it, it will make them sick.
Mm-hmm.
So you need an attenuated version of this or iteration of this, so that the idea is the immune system, the antibodies, you'll have a recognition of the pathogen, but the pathogen is so weak that it won't actually cause you to fall ill. That's the theory. In practice, what was discovered is because it's a weakened pathogen, it oftentimes fails to fully stimulate the immune system. It's like the immune system just ignores it, in effect.
Mm-hmm.
So the perception was, we'll add what's called an adjuvant, in this case, an aluminum salt, to the weakened pathogen, and that will actually excite, the aluminum salt will excite the immune system to, in a more excited way, recognize this weakened pathogen.
Mm-hmm.
Military, you know how the military treats soldiers. It's just like, well, we don't know if they're going to get shot by, machine guns, but let's just run them into it and see what happens. There's kind of a military mind component to all of this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the early vaccines were developed and sponsored by the U.S. military. Yeah. So anyway, there has been this concern that has been developing over the last 50 years that aluminum adjuvants may be contributing to the autism epidemic. It may be a contributing factor, that a developing central nervous system of a small child can't handle this toxicity load. And aluminum is toxic. The question is just
how much,
the dose, how much of it is required to create a toxic effect. So this has been a discussion for a long time. I happen to think that if you want to understand childhood autism, your best bet is not to look at one particular component. It's probably all of these components. I mean, a baby will go in for a well visit and he might receive 9 shots all at once. So you'll have overdose. 9 attenuated infectious disease pathogens plus adjuvants plus preservatives. Mm-hmm. And the concern is not all babies, but a percentage of them just can't handle it. They just have an adverse reaction to it.
Yeah.
High fever, seizures, with or without fever, and that it's an inflammatory response in the little baby's developing central nervous system that can result in encephalitis, inflammation of the brain. The initial encephalitis will resolve, but by then it's done brain damage, it's done neurological damage to the baby, and which results in this autism syndrome. That's the concern. We at the McCullough Foundation believe that that particular vignette that I just explained is actually happening. It's been happening. So just eliminating aluminum, it may help, but we believe the entire childhood schedule and all of its components needs to be carefully evaluated.
Yeah, I want to get into that for a second there. The looking at the child schedule, even some of the adults, the series of vaccines that you're taking over a period of time. And the one thing I was talking to a doctor, a colleague of mine, when I was stationed in Maryland, at Fort Detrick, of all places. It's kind of like the birthing center of all this mess. I was talking with a colleague of mine. And I said, so doc, explain to me when you're developing a vaccine or you're giving a vaccine, especially like you just said, the schedule for a kid, because we was actually talking about this at this time. This was back in 2016 window. We was talking about how what would be the appropriate dosage of vaccines for kids, because they kind of just open up a drawer, They just rip the packaging open and just go to work on the kid. It's like, wait a minute, this baby is like 50 pounds. Is it enough for this kid, or is it too much? So there was that conversation, like the appropriate amount of dosage, and then we start talking about half-lifing, because of a lot of the agents, a lot of let's just say, a lot of the chemical agents or compounds within the vaccines have proponents in it where there's half-lifing that's going on. So whether that half-life starts upon injection or upon manufacturing, that became a rabbit hole question. And it goes back to the efficacy of the particular vaccines in itself. So I don't want to get into that conversation right now, but I just want to get your thoughts on how do doctors determine the appropriate dosage, or scientists, for these vaccines for children? Because
I think the key word here is schedule. And I mean, the thing that's concerning about this is that, all human children, are treated as though they're essentially identical.
Exactly.
I mean, and we know from every other branch of medicine. I mean, if you were a doctor and you were just to say, I think that this medicine should be given to all children of the United States without exception.
Mm-hmm.
The immediate response would be, well, no, but wait a minute. I mean, there's certainly going to be a certain percentage, and it may be a small one, of children who have an adverse reaction to this medication. There are going to be what pharmacologists call contraindications. In other words, there are certain kids that have certain conditions or allergies or whatever that make the medicine inappropriate for that particular child. But when we come to vaccines, it's like, nope, all American children, all of them, in order to attend public school, must get this vaccine. And the administrations on the schedule are in accordance with the child's age. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm not a pediatrician, so if a child is particularly small or a particularly large, fast-growing child, I'm not sure if there might be modifications of dosing or not, but I don't think so. I think it is a prescribed dosing and vaccine schedule, and that's what everybody gets. And when you're talking about a population of 70, 80, 100 million children, even if you're talking about a small percentage of those children have an adverse reaction, I mean, even if it's just 1% or 2% or 3%, that's still a lot of children that have a profound health effect. And their parents are then, it's on the parents to then care for these disabled children. And we're most concerned about the severe end of autism spectrum disorder. It's called the spectrum. Mm-hmm. On one end, you have a child who's so badly disabled that he can't talk. He has no verbal ability. He requires round-the-clock care for the rest of his life. And so that is called profound autism. That's what we're concerned about. Mm-hmm. I mean, we might be concerned about the whiz kid computer programmer that spends 18 hours a day locked up in a basement doing weird stuff on his computer, but that's less of a concern than these profoundly disabled children. And so we need to examine two things. First of all, the vaccine manufacturers were granted full liability protection in 1986
Wrong answer.
in the event that their products injure or kill children. That needs to be rescinded.
I agree.
Because that liability protection has completely undermined any incentive to make sure that these products are optimized. I mean, and you know that from the military as well. It's like, I remember when I was a boy, I was really into World War II aviation. I loved World War II fighter planes, the Corsair, the Spitfire, the Mustang. But they rolled these planes out, super fast. There wasn't very much testing on them. It was like the plane looks cool. It's got firepower. It's fast. We'll put it up against the Messerschmitt. It'll be awesome. And particularly the Corsair, the aircraft carrier-based planes, it was dangerous as hell. Mm-hmm. They called it the ensign eliminator because it kills so many ensigns.
Yeah.
But there's no liability. It's just like you're a soldier. Take it for the team.
Yep.
And the same attitude has been applied to vaccines. A certain amount of kids are going to get injured and killed, but they're taking it for the team to provide this public health strategic asset for the population. That needs to be totally reevaluated.
I agree. Yeah, John, I want to jump into your book here. Where did it go? The screen jumped around on me. I want to jump into your book of Vaccines, the Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. You, along with Dr. Peter McCullough, great guy. He's that dude, the brainiac of doctors, I tell you. Talking to him before, and I was like, okay, got it. I had to go research everything. I was like, what the hell does that mean? But talk to us about the book and tell us what it's about and like the impetus behind it. Like, what was the motivation to write it?
Well, the book is a critical history and evaluation of the entire vaccine enterprise going all the way back to the 18th century. We look at the development. It's kind of an adventure story. It's the key guys who developed vaccines, where the ideas come from, how the ideas took shape over the years, the different technologies. From 1721, an early smallpox inoculation procedure in 1721, all the way up to the rollout of the messenger RNA vaccines in 2021. So it's a 300-year history. And we just take a critical eye to all of this. It's not an anti-vax book. We consider that vaccines can have some utility and have had some real public health achievements. But we put vaccines within the context of the development of all of our civilization. Clean water, readily available food, better nutrition, better housing, clean air. It just goes on and on and on. And the development of vaccines is happening at the same time is all of these other improvements in the standard of living. Well, I think a key observation in the book is that by the time you get to the year 1948 in the United States, which was the year that the vaccine schedule was inaugurated with the diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine, that was recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. By the time you get to 1948, infectious disease mortality from all of these bugs that had affected mankind for hundreds of years, mortality, that's death, annual death from these vaccines had already dropped from these pathogens, these illnesses, had already dropped 90 to 95% before the vaccines were introduced. And it's not hard to understand why. I mean, the conditions of living in cities in the year 1948 were completely different from the conditions in the 18th and 19th centuries. I mean, there's just no comparison to the environment, to nutrition, to hygiene, to clean water, to better housing, heating in the winter. I mean, you take poor Irish immigrant families in New York City in the 19th century. Dad is a laborer building the Brooklyn Bridge or something. He's got a wife and a bunch of small children living in a tenement building on the Lower East Side. It's freezing in the winter. There's one bathroom serving an entire floor of the tenement building. They don't have clean water. They're malnourished. They don't have sufficient vitamin nutrients. And, suddenly you get diphtheria running through the tenement building. Well, you can't compare those conditions to today. Right. There's no comparison whatsoever. But we see the precipitous drop of infectious disease mortality. What now gets the credit for it is not all of these elevations of the standard of living across the board. What our medical profession gives credit to, it's vaccines, as though it's some kind of magic thing.
Yeah.
So humans love high-tech, solutions. We're a weapons-making creature. We're threatened by something. We reach for a weapon or a talisman, a religious artifact to protect us. And I think in many ways, vaccines have been conceptualized as a weapon and as a religious artifact.
Yeah, I agree there. And it's interesting. The other component that people forget about is genetic. What I would say is genetic, not mutation, but genetic immunity.
You're talking about natural selection? How the human population? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That too. Yeah. Over time, one generation to the next, that generation may have suffered from something, that was like very prevalent of that time, but the next generation to come along, it's in their blood system, it's in their DNA now, so they're kind of like immune to the idea of it, type of thing. So yeah, natural selection.
It's a very, if I could interject there, that's a very important observation. So what you see happening during this 300-year period, what's happening is humans are more and more living in close quarters in cities.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's all of this international trade. Humans are sailing all over the world. They're from Europe, they're going to South America, to the Pacific Islands, to Africa. With the development of chloroquine quinine against malaria, you have Europeans going into Africa. And so you suddenly have all of this mixing together through trade, through warfare, through exploration. You're bringing infectious disease pathogens to people living in cities where there's no natural immunity to these bugs. Okay? In these early phases of this, you have a lot of children that are dying of these infectious diseases before they grow up to reproductive age to have kids. The ones with the more robust immunity who survive these childhood illnesses, they then pass on their more robust genes to their offspring. So over time, from generation to generation, during this 300-year period, you have this selective process whereby people are obtaining better immunity. Where you can really see this, for example, the United States invaded Cuba in 1898, the Spanish-American War. And the U.S. Army quickly observed that the native Cuban population, people who were originally from Spain and Africa, they had pretty good immunity to yellow fever because they'd been exposed to it
already
for many, many generations.
Right.
Particularly people of African ancestry where yellow fever was endemic. But American soldiers who'd been shipped down there from New York or whatever, they had very little immunity to yellow fever. So it's not only pharmaceuticals, it's just the development of natural immunity in a given population.
Right.
So that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. John, thank you so much for that, because like I said, this conversation, it doesn't happen enough in the public square. You have to be either a nerd or you in this domain of sorts to be a part of this discussion bank. And I know the audience would truly appreciate this discussion today. Tell people how they can follow you, support you, and get your book, sir.
I write a daily newsletter with Dr. Peter McCullough. You can find us at The Focal Points, that's plural, thefocalpoints.com. You can find out more about me and my books at author John Leake, and I'm on Twitter or X at John Sears Leake. And my book, which I hope everybody will buy. We spent years researching and writing it. And it's a fun book. It's kind of an adventure story. You can find on Amazon. Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality. It was a New York Times bestseller in August. So it's a cool book.
Awesome. Congratulations. Awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Good deal. Good deal. John, hey, thank you so much for being here once again. Truly appreciate you. Be safe out there and enjoy the success of the book, and look forward to having you back on again soon.
Thank you, Randy. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care. Be safe. Ladies and gentlemen, John Leake. Hey, look, folks, I highly recommend go picking up this book. Go check it out. It's Vaccines, the Mythology, Ideology, and Reality on Amazon. For those that know Dr. Peter McCullough, he was one of the frontline doctors back at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and he caught a lot of flack. Him along with Dr. Simone Gold, Dr. He's the designer of the mRNA. Can't think. I see his face and everything. Can't call his name. But anyways, these guys, they were the frontline force that kind of like paved the way for skeptics, if you want to call it that, or call us that. For skeptics to take a hard look at how COVID was being handled, the hydroxychloroquine, the ivermectin, the vaccines itself, or I should say the contaminated water shot. Anyway, so there was a lot of that going on during that time. So you just gotta check them out and check the book out. Reimagine how things would have been if we know today what we didn't know. Well, I should say, if we knew the things we know today, if we applied it to what we didn't know back then, how we would have treated COVID back then. So, well, folks, I'm gonna jump up out of here. Happy Veterans Day to all my fellow vets out there. Tomorrow is Veterans Day officially. Tomorrow, Armistice Day for those that's over in Europe. They still celebrate Armistice Day. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoy the free food out there. I will. I'm gonna try to partake this time. Last couple of years I was like, yeah, I ain't doing all that. But tomorrow I might get up early enough and go grab me some free IHOP. I think they got like a red, white, and blue pancake special or something like that going on. Run over to Starbucks and get a free iced coffee. Although I don't even drink iced coffee like that, but hey, it's free. Whatever. So, all right, folks, I'm going to holler at y'all later. Be safe, and God bless y'all, and ciao, ciao. I hope you enjoyed today's program. You can follow, like, share, subscribe on Spotify, Substack, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and your news. And also, you can download Let the Truth Be Told app on your favorite streaming platforms, such as Fire Stick, Apple TV, and Roku. Take care. God bless.